Jeremiah 29:11 is printed on more coffee mugs, graduation cards, and Instagram posts than almost any other verse in the Bible. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. It sounds beautiful. It sounds comforting. But what if I told you that verse was never meant for you? At least not in the way you think. Because when Jeremiah wrote those words, he was writing to people who had just lost everything. Their homes were burned. Their temple was destroyed. Their children were taken captive to a foreign empire, and the promise God gave them, they would never live to see it fulfilled. The real meaning of this verse is far more challenging, far more demanding, and far more beautiful than the inspirational poster version. And by the end of this video, I am going to show you the one line most people skip right before verse 11, a line that changes the entire meaning of God's promise. Not what you think. Stay with me, because once you see what Jeremiah actually said, you will never read this verse the same way again. Here is what most people do with Jeremiah 29:11. They pull it out of the Bible like a fortune cookie. They slap it on a wall. They whisper it during hard times like a magic spell. God has plans for me. Good plans. Everything will work out. But that is not what this verse is doing in its original context. Think about it. If someone wrote you a letter during the worst moment of your life, would you frame one sentence from the middle of that letter and ignore everything else? That is exactly what we have done with Jeremiah 29:11. We have turned a letter written to a devastated nation into a personal affirmation. The verse has become so domesticated, so comfortable, that we have forgotten it was born in fire. As theologian Walter Brueggemann wrote, the Bible is not a collection of nice thoughts. It is a dangerous book that subverts every comfortable assumption. And Jeremiah 29:11 is one of the most dangerously misunderstood verses in all of Scripture. To understand what God is really saying here, we need to go back 600 years before Christ. We need to go back to the ashes of Jerusalem. And what we find there is nothing like the greeting card version. But this next part is where it gets heavy. 597 B.C. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon does the unthinkable. He besieges Jerusalem. He breaches the walls. He drags the king of Judah away in chains. He takes 10,000 of the brightest, strongest, most skilled people in the nation, the priests, the craftsmen, the leaders, and he marches them across the desert to Babylon. Exile. Try to imagine what that felt like. These were people who believed with every fiber of their being that God lived in their temple, that Jerusalem was untouchable, that being God's chosen people meant protection. And now the temple is ransacked. The city is burning, and they are walking away from everything they knew in chains toward a pagan empire. Their theology was shattered, along with their city walls. And in the middle of this devastation, false prophets start telling them exactly what they want to hear. Do not worry. God will rescue us soon. 2 years, maybe 3, and we will be back home. It was a beautiful lie. If the truth about this promise is opening your eyes, hit like and subscribe for more biblical wisdom that transforms, because what Jeremiah says next will shock you. Now, what I am about to tell you sounds insane, but it is exactly what happened. While the exiles are weeping in Babylon, a prophet named Hananiah stands up and declares, God told me you are going home in 2 years. The yokes of Babylon will be broken. False hope, broken promise. And the people believed him. Why would they not? He sounded confident. He sounded spiritual. He said exactly what their broken hearts needed to hear. But Jeremiah sends a letter from Jerusalem to those exiles, and his message is the exact opposite. You are not going home. Not in 2 years, not in 10 years. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 10 says the exile will last 70 years. 70. Do the math. Most of the people hearing this letter would be dead before the promise was fulfilled. Their children might see it. Their grandchildren almost certainly would. But them, they would die in Babylon. As the great preacher Charles Spurgeon once said, God is too good to be unkind and too wise to be mistaken. When you cannot trace his hand, trust his heart. And trusting God's heart when his hand leads you into 70 years of waiting, that takes a faith most of us have never been asked to have. Stop and think about this for a second. Everyone quotes verse 11, plans to prosper you, hope and a future. Beautiful. But almost nobody reads verse 10, the verse right before it. And verse 10 changes everything. When 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will come to you. When 70 years are completed, that is the condition, that is the timeline. God is not saying, I will rescue you tomorrow. He is saying, I will rescue your descendants in 70 years. And in the meantime, look at what God tells them to do in verses 4 through 7. 1. Build houses and settle down. 2. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. 3. Marry and have children. 4. Seek the welfare of the city where I sent you. 5. Pray to the Lord on its behalf. God is telling his people to put down roots in enemy territory, to invest in a place they hate, to build lives in the land of their captors. God's plan was not escape. God's plan was faithfulness in the waiting. This is radically different from the way most people use this verse. Most people use it as a promise of rescue, but God was promising something far more demanding. He was promising purpose inside the pain. Here is where the story takes a dark turn for our modern comfort. We love the idea of God having plans for us when those plans mean promotion, healing, breakthrough, financial blessing. Comfort versus calling. But God told the exiles to seek the welfare of Babylon. Babylon, the empire that destroyed their homes, the nation that killed their families, the power that mocked their God, and he told them to pray for it, to serve it, to make it better. God's plan included loving your enemy before Jesus ever said the words. This is not a motivational poster. This is one of the most radical commands in the entire Old Testament. The Hebrew word used here for welfare is shalom, peace, wholeness, completeness. God was telling his broken people to become agents of shalom in the very place that broke them. Think about your own life, that job you hate, that city you did not choose, that season of waiting that feels like punishment. What if God is not asking you to escape it? What if he is asking you to transform it? As Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote from his own prison cell, the ultimate test of a moral society is the kind of world that it leaves to its children. The exiles were building a world they would never live in. But here is what nobody tells you about this passage. 70 years is not a number God pulled out of thin air. In the ancient world, 70 years represented a complete human lifetime. God was essentially saying, this exile will last your entire life. Lifetime. You will not see the deliverance. You will not walk through the gates of a rebuilt Jerusalem. You will plant and someone else will harvest. You will pray and your grandchildren will receive the answer. God's plan for you might be a plan that outlives you. And this is where modern Christianity gets deeply uncomfortable. We have built an entire theology around immediate blessing. Name it and claim it. Declare and decree. Your breakthrough is coming this week. But the people who first received Jeremiah 29:11, their breakthrough came 2 generations later. Faith beyond sight, beyond life. As the writer of Hebrews says about the heroes of faith, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them from a distance. That is the kind of faith Jeremiah 29:11 actually demands. Not faith for next week. Faith for a future you might never touch. Now forget everything comfortable about this story, because this next detail will rewrite how you understand God's promises. There is a man in Babylon named Daniel. He was taken as a teenager in the exile. He served foreign kings his entire life. He survived the lion's den. He interpreted dreams. He became one of the most powerful figures in the empire. And in Daniel chapter 9, verse 2, something extraordinary happens. Daniel reads the scroll of Jeremiah and realizes the 70 years are almost complete. Daniel did exactly what God told the exiles to do. He built a life in Babylon. He served with excellence. He prayed faithfully. And at the end of his life, he finally understood the timeline. Daniel lived the promise without ever seeing its fulfillment in full. He died in Babylon. He never went home. But his faithfulness in exile laid the foundation for everything that followed. The return under Ezra, the rebuilding under Nehemiah, the restoration of worship. Daniel is the living proof that God's plans are real even when you do not get to see them completed. As C.S. Lewis once reflected, we are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us. We are wondering how painful the best will turn out to be. Daniel knew the pain of the best, and he trusted anyway. Let me pause here because this next part changes the entire picture. Remember at the beginning I told you there is one line most people skip that changes the entire meaning of this promise. Here it is. Jeremiah 29 verse 13. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. This is the verse that follows the famous verse 11, and it reveals the true nature of God's plan. The plan was never primarily about prosperity. It was never primarily about a comfortable future. Seek me, find me. The plan was about a relationship. God was saying, through all of this exile, through all of this pain, through all of this waiting, the ultimate destination is not a rebuilt city. The ultimate destination is me. The promise was never about where you end up, but who you become. The exiles thought the worst thing that happened to them was losing Jerusalem. But God was showing them that they could find him anywhere. In Babylon, in chains, in 70 years of silence. The plan was always God himself, not the blessings, not the breakthrough, not the promised land, just him. And that truth terrifies us because it means God's plan might not include what we want, but it always includes what we need. If you thought that was powerful, you are not ready for this, because everything we have learned about the exiles applies directly to wherever you are right now. Maybe you are in your own Babylon, a marriage that feels like captivity, a career that feels like exile, a season of waiting that has stretched on so long you have forgotten what the promise even was. And everyone around you is selling you the false prophet version of hope. Just believe harder, just pray more, just declare your breakthrough. But Jeremiah's God does not work like that. Jeremiah's God says, build where you are, serve where you are, seek shalom for the very place that is breaking you. 1. Stop waiting for escape and start building. 2. Pray for the place that hurts you. 3. Seek God himself, not just his blessings. 4. Trust the plan, even when you cannot see the outcome. As the philosopher Kierkegaard wrote, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. The exiles could not understand the 70 years while living them. You cannot understand your season while you are in it, but you can be faithful inside it. Build, serve, seek, trust. Which part of this truth hit you the hardest? Comment the number of the chapter that changed your perspective. I bet most of you will say chapter 4 or chapter 8. So here is the truth about Jeremiah 29:11. It was written to people in the worst season of their lives, people who would never see the promise fulfilled, people whose obedience would benefit generations they would never meet. And the plan God had for them was not a shortcut out of pain. Faithfulness. The plan was faithfulness in the middle of it. The plan was seeking God so deeply in Babylon that they found him more intimately than they ever did in Jerusalem. The real plan was never about the destination, it was about the transformation. And that is the version of this verse that will actually change your life. Not the coffee mug version, not the greeting card version. The raw, demanding, beautiful version that says God's plans might cost you everything you wanted so he can give you everything you need. As A.W. Tozer wrote with stunning clarity, it is doubtful whether God can bless a man greatly until he has hurt him deeply. The exiles were hurt deeply, and through that hurt, they found God in a way no comfortable temple worship ever could have given them. Plans, hope, future, him. If you made it this far, comment 70 years to prove you understand what this verse really means. Stay in the Word, stay in the Spirit, and watch what God does.